Michigan's Adventure is a small Cedar Fair owned amusement park located in western Michigan. This regional park is located in Muskegon, Michigan, an odd city with some interesting tourist attractions. Here you will find campgrounds, a nice sandy beach along the shores of Lake Michigan, a submarine museum, as well as other outdoorsy activities such as hiking trails. The area has the vibe of a weekend destination for those looking to get out of the city to relax and unwind. The amusement park serves as a great place for local kids and teens during those trips. Michigan's Adventure has 7 roller coasters, one of which is the world-class Shivering Timbers, a wooden behemoth with over a mile of track. I decided to drive up to get some rides on June 10th, 2023, and I had quite an interesting day. Once I got through security and into the park, I noticed the crowds around Corkscrew and passed. I should have waited then, but ultimately I passed on it as the crowds grew throughout the day. It maintained a healthy line that got close to its entrance at times. I have rode it before, and though these are classic rides, the experience just doesn't do much for me. Instead, I decided to start with Wolverine Wildcat. I snagged the front row and enjoyed the Titan track section, which was followed by a newly retracked section that offered some excellent rapid-fire airtime hills, which afterward became old track that rode dreadfully, especially towards the end of the ride. I enjoyed it more than last year, but the ride really needed a full retrack on the off-season. I got 4 rides throughout the day. Mad Mouse is close by Wolverine Wildcat, so I headed over. During the day I got 2 rides, of which the first I was able to enjoy. This ride has severe maintenance issues, which I will address later. When functioning though, it is an enjoyable mouse with some nice drops and airtime. Afterwards, I headed over to Thunderhawk and I got a front row ride. I got as good of a ride as you can get on an SLC with horse collars. Cedar Fair really needs to replace these trains. The ride is painful and awkward, but could be appreciated with some better restraints. When I went to re-ride though, it broke down in the station and I did not bother to go back. I hit up the Junior Woody Zack's Zoomer. It's a fun time in the back row and a bit better than the Woodstock Express Cedar Fair Woodies. Speaking of Woodstock Express, their junior kiddie coaster, I didn't see the need to ride that today, but it is the final coaster in their lineup. Having rode their supporting lineup, I headed over to Shivering Timbers, and throughout the day, I got 3 rides in the back row and 4 rides in the front row. I highly enjoy this CCI Woody. At 122 feet tall, its height isn't impressive, but its long and dense structure and lengthy 5,383 feet of track make it a wooden giant that few in this genre of rides can compare to. Shivering Timbers brings both the airtime as well as great laterals with an intense helix at the end of the ride. I recommend plenty of rides as front row rides really shine on the camelbacks and back row rides deliver on the return trip to the station. It had the first valley retracked on the off-season, but some of the other valleys are starting to become bumpy. With 3 wooden coasters, Michigan's Adventure has their work cut out when it comes to maintenance. They have over 9,000 feet of wooden coaster track to maintain here, and unfortunately, they seem to be falling short in this area. Shivering Timbers could use just a bit more maintenance on the off-season. If you're an enthusiast who does not like anything other than the smoothest of wooden coasters, you may be disappointed with the jackhammering in the valleys. This is nothing though compared to Wolverine Wildcat, which shows the most neglect. its final section giving an absolutely dreadful ride experience. While I commend the park for its installation of Titan Track and the newly retracked portion after the first turnaround, I cannot understand why more work wasn't done to fully restore it, similar to how Cedar Fair recently retracked the King's Dominion Grizzly. Taking this a step further, the Hershey Park Wildcat just received the RMC treatment, which likely means they have some extra GCI Millennium Flyers that they could sell. These trains would ride better and solve the issue of there only being one train. One train ops are a sore spot for coaster enthusiasts, and unfortunately, every coaster with the exception of Mad Mouse was only running one train. Though Shivering Timbers and Thunderhawk have two trains, they weren't even on the track yet, and this was 3 weeks into the season. Combine the one train ops with minimal staffing, Cedar Fair IROC training, exit pass riders, and those classic PTC trains designed for humans the size of your great-grandparents, and well, you are going to have some legendarily long dispatch times. Imagine a ride with Steel Vengeance's length, but with only one train. Yup, easily 5 minutes in between cycles. The ops did what they could with the cards they were handed. They seemed like pretty cool people as well. Throughout the day, the ops on Shivering Timbers and Wolverine Wildcat noticed that I would come back and would ask how I was enjoying the rides and the park. It was a pleasant and pretty neat experience. After all, they are likely enthusiasts as well, and it's got to burn when your home park hasn't got a new coaster in 15 years. The guest services staff were also friendly when I went to redeem my fast lane. Speaking of fast lane here, Wolverine Wildcat, Shivering Timbers, and Mad Mouse all have convenient fast lanes that let out right into the station. You will reach a gate, at which time you will need to wait for a specific point in the ride cycle, usually right after the train dispatches, for the ride op to come and let you in. You should not go in yourself, nor should you harass the operator at the platform, as I have seen guests do. Unlike larger Cedar Fair parks, Michigan's Adventure does not employ an op to assign seats. Therefore, this is their solution to Fastlane. It still works, and you're usually on within a few cycles of reaching the station. What isn't cool is that Fastlane is currently a bad solution for the slow operations. On a busy Saturday, this park was only open for 8 hours and had lines reaching the entranceways of at least Shivering Timbers and Corkscrew. I didn't see where Wolverine, Wildcat, and Thunderhawk were, but those without a fast lane had precious little time to enjoy the park's offerings when not in line. I certainly would have had a Six Flags day without it. I wonder how many of those guests won't be back. The low point of my day was being stuck broken down on Mad Mouse. I was in a car with a dude who had brought his son to the park for an event, and he asked me if all coasters were as janky as the ones here at Michigan's Adventure. I told him no, and that he should try Kings Island, as they have the smoothest rides. The maintenance staff had Mad Mouse running 5 minutes later, but that was actually the second time it had broken down on me, as it had earlier in the day while I was sitting on its brake run. This ride is a broken mess, and because of that, they only run one train on the course, and even that seems to be too much for its current control system to handle. So how do we fix this park? To me, it's obvious that there are deep-rooted management issues that prevent this park from operating at its fullest potential. The bigwigs up at Cedar Fair do not invest in this park, despite it being well known how profitable it is for them. Michigan's Adventure opens later than any other Cedar Fair park, But despite this, enthusiasts have found coasters not even ready for open upon arrival. Apparently, Zach's Zoomer and Woodstock Express were not ready for opening day. Considering that Michigan's Adventure has a grand total of 4 PTC trains to refurbish during its off season, I find this to be unacceptable. Kings Island has double that amount in a much shorter off season, but despite this, they are fully operational on opening day. What is the hangup here? Perhaps Cedar Fair needs to employ more maintenance technicians or increase pay and hours to existing staff. Only after the existing rides have been fixed or renovated do I feel that Michigan's Adventure should invest in a new coaster. Before we discuss the new coaster, I think it's important to add that this park exists in an area where there is basically no infrastructure. Also, when I see a grand total of 2 ops at coasters like Wolverine Wildcat, they certainly cannot add a ride that requires a lot of manpower. With that in mind, I feel a traditional non-inverting steel coaster around 100 feet that focuses on airtime hills and banked turns would be good. Something like a Chance GTX Hyper or an SNS sit-down without the loops. I would put this new ride in between Thunderhawk and Wolverine Wildcat so that we can close the loop around the lake. The idea that Cedar Point is only a day's drive away has kneecapped this park for far too long. Cedar Fair, please give this park the investment it deserves.